Imagine this. A woman walks into a room alone. No group of girlfriends trailing behind her, no circle of people surrounding her, no chatter, no noise, no laughter to announce her arrival, just her. And immediately the room notices. Some whisper, some assume, some judge. Why is she alone? Doesn't she have any friends? Is she isolated? Is she broken? But what if I told you that sometimes the most powerful woman in the room is the one who stands without a crowd? What if I told you that a woman with no friends isn't always lonely, but instead free from drama, free from betrayal, free from the weight of needing to belong to people who don't truly see her? We live in a world that conditions women to measure their worth by connection, by how many friends they have, how many people approve of them, how many circles accept them. From the time we are little girls, we are told that having friends is proof that we are lovable, valuable, worthy. And when a woman doesn't follow that script, society slaps her with labels: cold, antisocial, arrogant, bitter. But what if those labels are wrong? What if the woman with no friends isn't broken at all, but whole in a way that others can't yet understand? You see, solitude scares people. Most can't sit with themselves for more than a moment without reaching for a phone, a distraction, or someone to fill the silence. But a woman who learns how to be at peace with her own company becomes dangerous, not because she is a threat to others, but because she cannot be controlled. She doesn't need you to like her. She doesn't need your approval. She doesn't need your invitation to the table, because she's willing to build her own. Now, don't misunderstand this. This is not about hating people. This is not about rejecting connection. It's about understanding that your strength as a woman is not determined by how many people surround you. It's determined by how unshakable you are when no one is around. A woman who can stand alone carries a power that few will ever comprehend. She's not desperate for validation. She doesn't chase friendships that drain her, and she doesn't lose herself trying to belong. So I ask you, what does it really mean to be a woman with no friends? Is she lonely, or has she found a freedom most people will never taste? Is she broken, or is she the only one who had the courage to cut ties with what didn't serve her? Maybe she isn't weak at all. Maybe she's the strongest one in the room. Tonight, we're going to dig into this. We're going to unravel the stigma, the myths, and the lies surrounding women who walk alone. And we're going to reveal why sometimes the smartest decision you will ever make is choosing solitude over shallow connections. Because the truth is this: when you learn to be a woman who can thrive without a circle, without an audience, without applause, you stop being a woman who begs to be included. And you start being a woman who decides who is worthy of standing beside her. So, are you ready to hear the truth about the woman with no friends? Because once you understand her, you may realize you are her. Most people hear the phrase, a woman with no friends, and immediately jump to the conclusion that she must be lonely, isolated, or struggling to find her place in the world. They imagine someone sitting in a quiet room, staring at her phone, waiting for someone to text her, waiting for an invitation that never comes. They assume sadness, weakness, or lack of belonging. But here's the truth: there is a massive difference between loneliness and solitude. And it is a difference most people never take the time to understand. Loneliness is a hunger, a craving for connection that is unmet. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice, a deliberate step into the quiet, into one's own space, where peace, clarity, and strength are born. Loneliness feels heavy. It eats away at your confidence. It whispers lies that you're unwanted or unworthy. It's the feeling of being surrounded by people yet unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. Many women live this reality even while having countless friends, being socially active, and keeping up appearances. They are busy, surrounded, even adored, yet they go home at night and feel that hollow ache inside. That is loneliness, and it proves that loneliness is not about the absence of people. It is about the absence of genuine connection, starting with the one you have with yourself. Solitude, however, is entirely different. Solitude is power. It is the ability to sit with yourself and not crumble under the silence. It is the space where you discover who you are when the world isn't telling you who to be. A woman who understands solitude does not fear the quiet. She embraces it because in the quiet she can hear her own thoughts. She can reflect, strategize, heal, and grow. She can listen to her inner voice without being drowned out by the noise of others' expectations, opinions, and judgments. Think about how society conditions us from childhood. Little girls are told to make friends, to be nice, to fit in. If you sit alone at lunch, people assume something is wrong. If you walk into a party by yourself, people wonder where your group is. The narrative is that your value as a woman is tied to your connections, your social circle, your belonging. And while friendships can indeed be beautiful, supportive, and enriching, there is a danger when you begin to measure your worth by them. Because what happens when those friends leave, what happens when you outgrow them, or they betray you, or they no longer align with your values? Does your worth suddenly vanish? Of course not. But if you have never learned the difference between loneliness and solitude, you will cling desperately to relationships, even toxic ones, just to avoid being the woman with no friends. Let me tell you something. Some of the strongest, most resilient, most visionary women in history walked alone for seasons of their lives. They understood that solitude was not a punishment, but a preparation. In solitude, they developed their ideas, they sharpened their focus, they built their resilience. While others were wasting energy trying to be accepted, they were conserving their energy to create, to grow, to build. Solitude is often where transformation begins. But here's why most people confuse solitude with loneliness, because they cannot imagine being comfortable with themselves. They are terrified of their own thoughts. They don't want to face their insecurities, their regrets, their unmet dreams. They need constant distraction, constant noise to avoid looking inward. But a woman who learns solitude doesn't run from herself. She confronts herself. She challenges herself. She forgives herself. And ultimately, she strengthens herself. Now let's get something straight. Being a woman with no friends doesn't mean you reject love, connection, or community. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself forever. It means you no longer depend on others to fill the emptiness you refuse to confront within yourself. It means you no longer allow your worth to be dictated by whether people invite you, include you, or validate you. You know who you are whether the room claps for you or not. That is the difference. Let's imagine two women. One has a large group of friends. She posts photos constantly, always surrounded, always busy, always seen. The other has no friends, not because she is incapable, but because she has chosen not to entertain shallow connections, not to keep company with people who gossip, who betray, who drain her spirit. The first woman looks popular, but behind the photos, she feels empty. The second woman looks alone, but in her solitude, she feels full, grounded, and at peace. Tell me which woman is really lonely? Which woman is truly strong? The danger of misunderstanding this concept is that many women sacrifice their authenticity to avoid appearing friendless. They stay in toxic circles. They allow disrespect. They tolerate mediocrity, all because they fear solitude. But the woman who embraces solitude realizes that she is not defined by her circle. She is defined by her choices, her boundaries, her self-respect. So let's flip the script. Instead of saying, a woman with no friends must be lonely, let's start saying, a woman with no friends might be the one who finally understands herself. Instead of assuming she is weak, start realizing she may be the strongest. Because solitude builds a kind of strength that nothing else can. And once you've mastered it, you stop fearing abandonment, rejection, or betrayal. Why? Because you've proven to yourself that you can survive and even thrive without anyone else holding you up. That is the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness weakens, solitude empowers, and when a woman chooses solitude over shallow connections, she chooses herself. And there is nothing more powerful than that. There is a kind of strength that no one can give you and no one can take away from you. It is the strength that comes from knowing deep down that you can rely on yourself. Most people spend their entire lives looking outward for security, for validation, for support. They believe that as long as they have friends, family, or someone to lean on, they'll be fine. But what happens when those people disappear? What happens when the friend betrays you, the family member misunderstands you, or the partner walks away. If your strength only exists when someone else is holding you up, then it was never truly yours in the first place. That's why self-reliance isn't just a trait, it's a foundation. And for a woman with no friends, it is her greatest weapon. Self-reliance doesn't mean you don't accept help. It doesn't mean you shut people out or pretend you can do everything alone. It means that at your core, you know you have the ability to survive and thrive, even when no one else shows up for you. It's the ability to make decisions without waiting for someone else to approve. It's the confidence to walk into a room without needing someone beside you to validate your presence. It's the peace of knowing that you are your own anchor, your own home, your own safety net. Here's the harsh reality. Too many women are raised to depend on others. Depend on parents for identity. Depend on friends for belonging. Depend on partners for stability. Society constantly reinforces the message that a woman is only complete if she is attached to a group, a man, a family, a title. So when a woman stands on her own, she's seen as unusual, even threatening. Because a self-reliant woman cannot be controlled. She cannot be manipulated with loneliness. She cannot be trapped by the fear of abandonment, and she cannot be pressured into compromising her worth for the sake of belonging. That is power. Think about it. A woman who has built her life on self-reliance doesn't panic when people leave. She doesn't chase friendships to fill the silence. She doesn't beg for inclusion. Why? Because she knows she has herself. She trusts herself to figure things out. She knows she can build again if everything collapses. That confidence doesn't just happen overnight. It is built in the quiet moments, in the solitude, in the times when she had no one else to turn to but herself. One of the most dangerous lies we've been told is that independence is selfish, that a woman who doesn't constantly lean on others is somehow cold or detached. But in truth, independence is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself and others. When you're self-reliant, you don't drain the people around you with constant neediness. You're not waiting for them to rescue you, fix you, or validate you. Instead, you meet them as equals, not as someone desperate for their approval. That changes the way you show up in every relationship, stronger, clearer, and more authentic. And let's be honest, when you can rely on yourself, you also raise the standards for the people you allow in your life. You stop tolerating half-hearted friendships, one-sided relationships, and energy-draining connections. You no longer accept bare minimum treatment because you're not afraid of being alone. You're not depending on them for survival. You're choosing whether or not they deserve a place in your life. That shift is transformative. Think of it like this. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. If you've never built self-reliance, you will see someone incomplete, someone waiting for others to add pieces to her. But if you've embraced self-reliance, you look in that mirror and see someone whole. You don't need anyone to complete you. You are already complete. Anyone who enters your life is there to add value, not to fill a void. That is the difference. Now, let me challenge you. Ask yourself this. How much of your confidence is borrowed? How much of your happiness depends on someone else showing up for you? If your answer is a lot, then you're not truly standing on your own yet, and that's not something to feel ashamed about. It's something to become aware of. Because awareness is the first step toward change. The second step is courage. Courage to start making decisions without asking for 10 different opinions. Courage to walk into spaces without waiting for a friend to come with you. Courage to sit with yourself long enough to discover that you are capable of more than you've ever given yourself credit for. A self-reliant woman doesn't live in fear of being abandoned because she's already proven to herself that she can survive the storm. She doesn't live in fear of failure because she knows she'll rise again. She doesn't live in fear of rejection because she knows rejection doesn't define her worth. This level of strength is magnetic. It attracts respect, admiration, and even envy. But it also intimidates people who thrive on others' dependence. And that's why so many fear the woman with no friends. She is the proof that strength doesn't come from numbers. It comes from within. You see, when you rely on yourself, you start moving differently. You carry yourself differently. You stop settling. You stop chasing. You stop begging. You start walking with the assurance that no matter who stays or who goes, you will be fine. You start making choices based on what is right for you, not on what will keep you accepted by others. And that is the ultimate freedom. Self-reliance doesn't make you cold. It doesn't make you unloving. It makes you unshakable. And when life inevitably tests you, when friends disappear, when challenges hit, when you face those long, quiet nights, it will be your self-reliance that carries you through. Not the crowd, not the applause, not the validation. Just you. So when people look at a woman with no friends and assume she must be weak, they couldn't be more wrong. She might be the strongest one in the room because she knows that no matter what, she can stand. And when you know you can stand on your own, you will never again fear falling. We live in a world that worships numbers. How many likes you get, how many followers you have, how many people you surround yourself with. Somewhere along the way, society decided to measure worth by quantity instead of quality. And that mentality didn't just stay on social media. It seeped into the way people view relationships and friendships. The message is loud and clear. The more friends you have, the more loved you must be. The more successful you must be. The more fulfilled your life must look. But let me tell you something. It is one of the biggest lies you will ever hear. Because friendship isn't about numbers, it's about depth. There are women who walk into a room with a crowd of people around them, laughing, smiling, always surrounded, and yet when life hits them hardest, not one of those people shows up. Not one of those friends answers the call at 2 a.m. Not one of them helps when everything falls apart. Then you realize that the glitter of quantity is nothing more than a cover-up for the emptiness of shallow connections. Because the truth is, 1,000 friends who won't stand by you when you need them are worth less than one who will. The myth of friendship numbers is dangerous because it convinces women to chase validation instead of connection. You see people boasting about how popular they are, how everyone loves them, how they never go anywhere alone. But what's the point of being surrounded if you still feel unseen? What's the point of being liked by everyone if none of them truly know you? Real friendship isn't about how many, it's about how much trust, how much loyalty, how much truth. Here's what people don't often admit. Sometimes the loneliest people are the ones with the most friends, because their friendships exist on the surface. Fun, casual, convenient, but never deep enough to carry weight. They're friends when it's easy, friends when it's fun, but not friends when it's hard. And this is where a woman with no friends might actually have more strength than the woman with 100, because she's not playing the numbers game. She's not trying to keep up appearances or measure her worth by who sits at her table. She's focused on something far more important, authenticity. When you stop chasing quantity, you free yourself from the trap of people-pleasing. You no longer say yes to everyone just to belong. You no longer stretch yourself thin just to keep everyone happy. You no longer tolerate fake smiles and half-hearted loyalty just so you can say you're not alone. Instead, you start becoming intentional. You start recognizing that not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, your heart. That's the power of choosing quality over quantity. You filter out the noise and you make room for the people who matter. And let me tell you this, sometimes quality means you only have one real friend. Sometimes quality means you don't have any for a while because you're waiting for the right ones to show up. And that's not a weakness, that's wisdom. Because while others are busy chasing crowds, you're busy building strength. While others are trying to be everywhere for everyone, you're learning how to stand firm on your own. And that is exactly what prepares you to recognize true friendship when it does come. Here's something you may not realize. Fake friends are costly. They cost you time. They cost you energy. They cost you peace. They drain you with their drama, their inconsistency, their lack of support. They make you doubt yourself. They pull you into competition. They celebrate when you fail and disappear when you succeed. And yet, so many women hold on to them because they fear the label of having no friends. But let me ask you this, what is worse, being alone and at peace or being surrounded and secretly miserable? The woman who understands quality over quantity chooses peace every time. She knows that solitude is not the same as emptiness. She knows that not all company is good company. She knows that real friendship isn't measured by how often you hang out, but by how deeply you can trust. That one friend who believes in you, who supports you, who holds you accountable when you're wrong, that friend is worth more than 10, who clap for you only when it benefits them. This is why some of the strongest women in history, the ones who changed the world, often walked with very few by their side. They weren't interested in being liked by everyone. They weren't focused on building crowds. They were focused on truth, on purpose, on surrounding themselves only with people who aligned with their vision. And sometimes that meant walking alone. So if you are a woman with no friends, don't see it as a weakness. See it as a cleansing. It means you haven't settled for mediocrity. It means you've cleared the space for something real, something lasting, something valuable. And it means you've chosen yourself over the illusion of belonging. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop chasing numbers, the right people start to find you. The kind who respect your boundaries, who celebrate your growth, who push you to be better, not bitter. They won't need you to perform or pretend to belong. They'll value you exactly as you are. And even if it's just one or two people, those relationships will be worth more than an entire room full of acquaintances who disappear when the lights go out. So stop worrying about how many friends you have. Stop comparing your circle to someone else's. Stop believing the myth that more equals better. Because the truth is, fewer but real is always greater than many but fake. The strongest women aren't the ones with the biggest circles. They're the ones who know their circle's worth. And sometimes that circle is just you, standing strong, waiting for the right ones to arrive. Because in the end, it's not about numbers. It's about truth. And truth will always outweigh popularity. Silence is not something many people are comfortable with. In fact, most people will do almost anything to avoid it. They keep the television running in the background. They scroll endlessly on their phones. They fill every gap in conversation with noise because silence feels heavy, intimidating, even frightening. But what if silence was not your enemy? What if silence was the very place where you found your greatest clarity, your truest voice, and your deepest strength? A woman who has no friends is often forced to face silence more than others. And at first, that silence can feel unbearable. You start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Shouldn't I be talking to someone right now? Shouldn't I be surrounded by people like everyone else seems to be? That's the conditioning society places on us, to equate silence with loneliness and noise with fulfillment. But if you lean into that silence instead of running from it, you begin to uncover something extraordinary. Silence is not empty. Silence is full of wisdom, full of answers, full of the parts of yourself that you couldn't hear before because you were too distracted by the voices of others. When you strip away the constant chatter of friends, acquaintances, and social expectations, you're left with the pure sound of your own inner voice. And that voice, though often ignored, is the one that guides you toward the life you're meant to live. The reason so many people feel lost, confused, or disconnected is because they're drowning in noise. They're busy listening to everyone else's opinions, everyone else's expectations, everyone else's judgments. But when you're forced into silence, you get the opportunity to listen inward. And that's when clarity begins to show up. Clarity doesn't come from being around 1,000 people telling you what to do. It comes when you sit with yourself long enough to figure out what you actually want. It comes when you face the uncomfortable truths about your life instead of masking them with distraction. It comes when you ask yourself the hard questions. Am I happy where I am? Am I proud of the choices I've made? Am I living for me? Or am I living for someone else? And only in silence can those answers rise to the surface. But here's where the real power lies. Silence doesn't just bring clarity, it builds strength. It teaches you how to rely on your own inner voice instead of constantly looking for validation. It forces you to sit with your emotions, to process them, to understand them, instead of dumping them onto someone else. It gives you the kind of emotional resilience that most people never develop because they've never allowed themselves to be alone long enough to build it. Think about it. If you can sit with yourself in silence and feel at peace, what can the world possibly take from you? If you can stand alone and not crumble, what power does anyone else hold over you? That's what silence gives you. It's not weakness, it's armor. It's the foundation that makes you unshakable. Now let's talk about the inner voice. Every single person has it, but not everyone can hear it. Why? Because it's drowned out by the noise of life. The inner voice isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It nudges. It guides quietly. And that's why so many miss it. But when you have no friends, when you're not constantly surrounded by chatter and noise, you get the chance to hear it clearly. And that voice, your intuition, your gut feeling, your deepest knowing, it never lies. Your inner voice will tell you when someone's energy isn't right. It will tell you when you're settling for less than you deserve. It will tell you when you need to leave, when you need to stay, when you need to rise, when you need to wait. And if you learn to trust it, you will never be lost. The strongest women in the world aren't the ones who listen to everyone else. They're the ones who listen to themselves. But silence isn't just about listening. It's about creating. It's in the quiet that ideas are born. It's in the stillness that visions come to life. It's when you turn off the noise that your creativity flows, your dreams surface, and your purpose becomes clear. This is why so many leaders, thinkers, and visionaries often value solitude. They understand that silence is not a void, it's a well of strength. And here's something important. The world will try to convince you that being silent or spending time alone means you're missing out. But the truth is, the people constantly running from silence are the ones missing out on themselves, missing out on their clarity, missing out on their potential. Because when you run from silence, you run from the very place where transformation happens. The woman with no friends, who learns to sit in silence, who learns to listen to her inner voice, becomes untouchable. She doesn't need constant external validation because she validates herself. She doesn't need endless opinions because she trusts her own judgment. She doesn't need the noise to fill the emptiness because she's filled herself from within. And let's be clear, this doesn't mean you should never have friends or that you should live in isolation forever. It simply means that your ability to stand strong in silence is what makes every future friendship stronger. Because when you do build connections, they're not out of fear of being alone, they're out of choice. You're not clinging to people because you need them, you're choosing them because you want them. That difference is everything. So embrace the silence, lean into it. Let it strip away the lies you've been told about yourself. Let it reveal the truth you've been too distracted to hear. Let it guide you back to your inner voice. Because once you've learned to thrive in silence, you'll discover something extraordinary. You were never truly alone. You had yourself all along. And that is more powerful than any crowd of so-called friends could ever give you. With silence, clarity, and your inner voice, this is not punishment. This is your power. And when you learn to use it, you become a woman no one can shake, no one can define, and no one can silence. There is a narrative society loves to repeat about women who walk alone. It paints them as lonely, broken, or incomplete, as though a woman without a circle of friends or a partner somehow has less value. That story has been fed to us for so long that many women begin to believe it themselves. They see their isolation as a flaw, as something that makes them weaker, smaller, less worthy. But here's the truth. Isolation can either be your cage or it can be your kingdom. It depends entirely on how you use it. When you learn how to turn isolation into strength, it stops being a weakness and becomes the very reason you are unshakable. Being unshakable doesn't mean being emotionless or disconnected. It doesn't mean you never need people. What it means is this: you are so deeply anchored in who you are that nothing external can knock you off balance. No rejection, no betrayal, no abandonment, no absence of companionship can strip you of your worth. When you move from isolation into power, you learn that standing alone does not equal standing empty. It means standing whole. The world often misunderstands women who are unshakable. People assume strength comes from numbers, from being surrounded, from having a team, and yes, relationships matter. Community matters, but what's even more powerful is the woman who knows she can stand in a room with no one behind her and still refuse to break. That is where true power lives. Isolation is often the birthplace of that power. It strips away distractions, it forces you to confront yourself, and it demands that you rise without applause. And isn't that the ultimate test of strength? To build yourself not because someone is cheering you on, but because you know you deserve it? That's how resilience is forged. That's how a woman becomes unshakable. Think about it. Every time you've gone through something hard, how much of that battle did you truly face alone? The truth is, even when people are around you, you are the one who must carry yourself through your darkest moments. You are the one who has to decide to get back up. You are the one who has to silence the self-doubt, wipe the tears, and take the next step forward. That is why isolation is not your enemy. It's your training ground. It is where you develop the ability to self-soothe, to self-direct, and to self-empower. When you learn to rise in isolation, you become untouchable to the forces that try to break you. You stop fearing abandonment because you know you can survive without constant company. You stop clinging to unhealthy friendships or toxic relationships because you understand your worth doesn't depend on them. You stop chasing validation because you've already found it within yourself. And when you live in this way, you start making choices not from desperation, but from power. You don't take what's given, you demand what you deserve. Redefining what it means to be unshakable is crucial because too many women are conditioned to believe strength is loud, aggressive, or constantly proven. But the strongest form of power is often the quietest. It's the calm in the storm, the unbending spirit, the ability to stay rooted when the ground shakes beneath you. That's not something that comes from external applause. It comes from the solitude where you meet yourself fully. Isolation teaches you something else too, discernment. When you've lived without constant companionship, you learn not to confuse company with connection. You begin to see the difference between people who genuinely add value to your life and those who are simply filling space. And when you've already learned to be whole by yourself, you stop letting just anyone take up space. You become selective. Your standards rise. And that's when your circle, if you choose to have one, becomes smaller but far more powerful. Because you no longer choose friends out of fear of being alone. You choose them from a place of strength. And that's the irony. Once you embrace isolation and use it as a tool for power, you actually become better at relationships. Why? Because you no longer bring neediness into them. You don't come to people asking them to complete you. You come whole, and wholeness attracts wholeness. Instead of dragging people into your emptiness, you invite them into your fullness. That shift alone transforms the quality of your relationships forever. But let's take it further. What happens when a woman becomes truly unshakable? She starts living without fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood. All of it loses its grip because when you've learned to stand alone, no one can use your aloneness as a weapon against you. When you've already faced your own silence and survived, the world's noise cannot break you. And when you've built your foundation on yourself, no external storm can collapse you. This is the woman who walks into a room and commands it without saying a word. This is the woman who can lose people, jobs, opportunities, and still rebuild because her strength doesn't live in those things. It lives in her. This is the woman who refuses to be shaken because her worth is not negotiable. That's the transformation, isolation to power. It's not about rejecting the world or living without people forever. It's about mastering the ability to thrive even when people are absent. It's about training yourself to hear your own voice above the noise. It's about becoming the kind of woman who cannot be broken by silence, by absence, or by solitude. So the next time you find yourself in isolation, don't see it as a punishment. See it as an invitation to rise, to build, to listen, to strengthen. Because isolation is not the end of your story. It is the forge that shapes you into the kind of woman the world cannot bend. And when you emerge from it, when you've turned your solitude into power, you will know a truth that few ever discover. You don't need a crowd to be unstoppable. You only need the unshakable woman staring back at you in the mirror. At the end of it all, the measure of your strength is not how many people stand beside you, it's how you rise when no one does. A woman with no friends is not a woman without power. She is a woman who has faced the silence, who has walked through the fire of solitude, and who has discovered that her worth was never up for debate. You are not defined by who walks into your life or who walks out. You are defined by how fiercely you choose to stand when the room grows empty. And when you master that, you become unshakable. You become untouchable. You become the kind of woman this world cannot break, cannot silence, and cannot control. So do not fear isolation. Do not fear the quiet. Do not fear standing alone, because it is in those moments when the world is stripped away that your truest self is revealed. And that self, the one who has survived, who has rebuilt, who has risen again and again, is the most powerful version of you that has ever existed. Remember this, you do not need a crowd to validate you, and you do not need a circle to complete you. You are already whole. You are already worthy. And when you finally embrace that truth, you will understand that walking alone was never your weakness. It was your greatest strength. Now step into that strength, stand tall in it, own it, because the world doesn't belong to those who wait for permission. It belongs to the women who are unshakable, even when they walk alone,